Dr. Shadi Arafij, welcome back to the Vet World, mate.
Hey, thank you for having me, sir. It's a pleasure.
We've talked clinical before, we've talked surgery. That's your official qualification as a specialist surgeon. But today we want to talk about your other baby, your other skill, telemedicine, which is your career, it's your passion, it's what you're working on.
Correct. Yeah, the veterinary field, even though telehealth is, I think, pretty much well accepted now in the veterinary space, there's still a lot of confusion, a lot of fear around it. And so anything we can do to help share the information will be valuable for our colleagues, regardless of where they're located on the globe.
Quick recap for our guests. So, what's your role in telemedicine?
Yes, so I have a company called Vet Triage, and we focus on teletriage, tele-advice. Our goal is to figure out, do you have a medical emergency or not with your pet? And if the pet owner does have an emergency, we're going to call them in, refer them to the nearest on-call doctor or emergency facility, send records over, and get them to go to the facility and get taken care of. If it's not an emergency, which is the majority of these pets, over 80%, then we're going to give them education, palliative care, advice, what to monitor for, when to follow up with their family veterinarian for an appointment. And that's the teletriage, tele-advice aspect of this. And then, of course, we send that pet owner the medical records. And if they came from a clinic that's already partnered with Vet Triage, we send the records over to that partnered clinic as well. So that's the basis behind the Vet Triage platform.
So, you're not just making treatment plans and dispensing medications or stuff. You don't do that's why it's teletriage for you, not telemedicine. It's not let's manage your diabetic patient and adjust insulin doses and stuff like that. It's just, do you need to go to a vet, and what can I do at home right now to buy me some time until I can get to my vet?
So it depends. So it's a yes and no answer. Telehealth is the overarching term that describes anything virtual between doctor and patient slash client.
Yep.
That's telehealth. Telemedicine that you're referring to is what we typically think of, which is a branch of telehealth that includes the establishment of a veterinary client-patient relationship, the VCPR, which is typically established in person with a physical exam in person. Teletriage, teleadvice, teleconsulting, telediagnostics are all different other categories of the overarching term telehealth. The problem that I have with the specifics of a treatment plan, let's say, is where does the line get drawn between tele-advice, which is supposed to be general, non-specific information that a veterinarian gives to a client, and more specific for that client. So if you do have a diabetic that's talking to us, and let's say they measured a blood glucose level, they're concerned because the glucose level is this, and the patient didn't eat, and the vet's open tomorrow, is it an emergency? Well, we have some room there to play with advice. Whether we give insulin, do we give half dose, do we not give it, do we feed, not feed? So at the end of the day, one of my focuses with spreading the word on telehealth is that we really have to start with the judgment of the veterinarian. I believe that regardless of whether you're performing telemedicine, teletriage, teleadvice, I think the fundamental has to be trusting the judgment of our colleagues. So if my veterinarian feels they can give specific targeted treatment plan for that diabetic, they believe that they have the ability to do so, then I say go with it. Have at it. You're the boss, right? You're the veterinarian. And then there are some vets who maybe feel a bit more cautious about it. So it's a yes and no because it kind of depends. And I want to always defer to the judgment and ethics of our colleagues rather than saying, don't cross this line, you're in this category. I really think we have to trust our colleagues more when it comes to that.
Okay. So I want to take this conversation from two different angles. One is a listener going, I'm curious about working in telehealth of some sort. Because again, you get to a point in your career when you feel like a change or something practically changes and you can't do the standard GP job, or just you're bored, you want to try something else. So I think there's definitely going to be listeners here who fall in that camp. And then we'll get to some practicalities and lessons learned by you guys as a provider of telehealth. So challenges, shortfalls. So this is maybe going to be for the clinic owner or somebody saying, well, I either want to consider utilizing a service like that or even establishing my own within my business. And is it, there's going to be some questions and concerns, I'm sure. I certainly have many questions about it. So does that make sense? Is that a good way to approach this conversation?
Let's do it, brother. Absolutely.
All right. So Shadi, I want to consider a career in telemedicine,
Mm-hmm.
but I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to know what it's like to work as one. What's going to irritate me? What's great about it? Things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Do you have a team of how many? How many people do this for you guys? With you?
Just over 70 doctors, and then we have half a dozen support staff, most of which are veterinary technicians, veterinary nurses. They answer the phones. They don't give medical advice. But then there's also a team on the back end. We have our own in-house development team. They're in charge of all the technology. And then we have my business partner who is not medical, but he manages our marketing, our financial, our legal. And then of course I'm the chief medical officer, so I manage the protocols for the staff, training, hiring, firing, that sort of thing. So we have a big team behind the scenes that operates on this. But at the face of the public, about 70 doctors.
Okay. Here's a question when, well, now maybe as well, but in the early days, did you actually need to get on the phone and speak to clients as the doctor in the team of the ownership team? Did you have to do the actual work?
Oh
Have you
yeah,
had to?
in the beginning when we first launched this, the end of 2019, I was the only doctor on the platform, and we were
Okay.
global from day one, and any animal type from day one. So I was doing all the calls. It probably slowed down for me, meaning we hired enough veterinarians to cover it about a year ago. Is when I finally was able
Okay.
to no longer had to wake up at night and take calls. And then even now though, because we keep getting busier and busier every month, every year, I still jump in once in a while because I don't want clients to wait too long, and so I'll jump in and
Mm.
help my veterinarians out.
Okay.
But
So you are out there on the front lines
yeah,
sometimes. So
yeah.
if when I ask these questions, you could definitely give me firsthand experience. I do want to make surgeon jokes. Is your general advice when somebody calls you like, yeah, needs to cut it.
Yeah.
How do you handle the questions about mm, deworming protocols and parasites and stuff like that from way back at university? I'd imagine in your residency and surgery life, you didn't
Yeah.
deal with too many first opinion things anymore.
Oh, for sure. And just like I have never worked on horses or cows or sheep, and yet we would get these calls about a kangaroo or an ostrich or a squirrel, and I have no clinical experience with that. But if there's one thing that veterinarians are good at, it's being versatile. And so if I know that the question being posed to me by the pet owner is not an emergency, but I don't know the answer, but I know it's not an emergency, I can tell the client, look, let me do some research, talk to my colleagues, and I'll call you back later with some information. And then they appreciate that because at least they know it's not an emergency, and I can now contact them back and give them a more well-informed decision. If it's a really weird animal type, I will literally look up material with the pet owner watching me, looking in Merck manual, or I'm doing a PubMed search to find information, because sometimes that pet owner who owns a really weird animal, they know more than I do about it. And so they just want a doctor's perspective on it. So I have to educate
Gotcha.
myself. So fortunately for these situations, I'm not above saying, you know what, I don't know, but let me find out and I'll call you back later on today with an answer. So I want to make sure that the pet owner gets what they paid for. And then of course for me, I gain the benefit of having that extra knowledge. So next time if I get a fox or a sea otter, I can hopefully tackle it a bit easier, than the first time.
I think we've just addressed probably one of the big worries for somebody considering this. But I suppose it's the same in general clinical practice, but it is that fear of going, yeah, am I going to be able to do this job? Am I going to be able to perform on the spot and make the right decisions and not give bad advice? So that's actually a great answer, because is that something that people worry about when you have interviews or when people contact you about work? Is that one
Yes,
of their concerns?
because veterinarians are reliant on their hands. They want to be able to perform a physical exam on their own. They want to perform a rectal exam, listen to the heart and lungs. They want to run blood work and radiographs and all that stuff. They want to have medical records in front of them. And so they are concerned. However, I have found that the cutoff time from graduation to when I will even entertain the idea of them joining the team is 5 years. Any vet that I've tried to hire who've been out for under 5 years from school, they get killed on this. So you have to have some level of real life experience. You have to have seen a case 1,000 times in order to feel comfortable giving a pet owner advice over video. So yes, you're absolutely right. Even a seasoned veterinarian is scared of it, but when they get into it, if they have 5+ years of experience, they get into it, they realize quickly these are very basic situations, and these pet owners just need peace of mind of what to do next or what to look out for. And so then they ease into it from that point on. But yeah, there is that fear. But you have to have ample clinical experience before you can dive into this. But also don't forget, Hugh, that we started this platform from day one being global, any animal type, right? 24/7. You don't have to do that. If you wanted just dogs and cats, I'm sure there are platforms out there that just do dogs and cats. If you want to incorporate telehealth in your brick and mortar practice, that way it's your own clients, you know them, you already have an established VCPR, you can do that. So you don't have to do what we're doing. We did this because the long-term plan is to partner with veterinary hospitals, universities, shelters, rescues, etc., and be the all-encompassing tool that they can rely on to help with their case management. So we're unique in that. No one else does it this way, but it's also daunting to your point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one concern addressed. Do you have other things that pop up when people start speaking to you about it and going, well, I'm interested? Common concerns, fears, worries that people that need addressed that you see popping up time and time again.
Absolutely. So the legal aspect, they're worried that what if I tell a client it's not an emergency, you can wait for your vet to open, and then the dog dies overnight?
Yes.
What do you do? Okay, so it's a very common concern, and rightfully so. On our platform, I've created several layers of protection. The first layer of protection is going to be the website. The website says specifically what the client should expect, triage and advice. Then the second stage is before the client, after they create an account, before they pay, there's a disclaimer. They have to read the disclaimer and sign off that they acknowledge the disclaimer. The disclaimer talks about VCPR and the pros and cons of telehealth. After that, we have our doctor. They're the third layer of protection. The doctor reiterates what the goal of the platform is, what they feel comfortable doing, what they can say, what they can do. The fourth layer of protection is the paperwork, because we email the client the medical records, which is a summary of the advice given. And at the bottom, we have more legal language that reminds them of the disclaimer they signed, that we are limited by what we can do, it's virtual, etc. The next layer of protection is we give the client the tools they need to monitor that patient. So what clinical signs to look out for. And then we also give them the means to recontact us without paying again by email or phone, 24/7. These things are monitored. And that way, if the pet does decline or show additional symptoms, or they just have more questions, they can talk to a veterinarian free of charge 24/7 until their veterinary clinic is open again, and then we hand them off. All those layers of protection are there for the team and for the veterinarian. But also, we have our own liability insurance for the company, and our vets have their own personal liability insurance. So all of these layers of protection help us, and knock on wood, so far we've been safe. We're approaching 200,000 cases in under 5.5 years, and we haven't had a problem yet. So all of these layers protect us, and it's worked well so far. So that's a common question, is the legal part of it, and that's how we handle it.
Okay, so how I read that answer is, it is potentially a concern, hence all the protection. So make sure you protect. So if you are considering a job like this, double check that where you're going to work, that you are protected to some extent, that there's something to cover your ass if it should happen. But also be the reassurance of you guys have the numbers to show,
yes,
yeah, theoretically possible. But if you're an experienced vet, and if I think about, because that's definitely one of my concerns, and I still feel the same when I'm on shift in an emergency hospital and people call us for advice often. Very often I'll answer a question going, yeah, that sounds fine, it doesn't sound like we, and in the back of my head there'll be a little bit of, but what if you're wrong, and it's actually
but that's human nature, right? Like we're not gods. We can't predict the future with 100% certainty. Any reasonable human being knows that. You're doing the best you can with what the tools you've got ahead of you, and also what your experience levels are. So we're human. But also, if you look at the numbers, the number of telehealth cases that have been brought to any medical board globally, for all intents and purposes, is basically zero. But if you look at any given area, a county in a state here in the US, and you look at the number of medical board complaints that occur, it's going to be probably hundreds, if not thousands, And if you multiply that by an entire country, I mean, telehealth doesn't even touch the numbers that brick and mortar has. So just by virtue of statistics, brick and mortar has way more risk of liability than a virtual platform.
That's interesting. I wonder why. Is that you think it's expectations?
Some of
Is
it
it
is
because
that.
people expect that? Look, it's I appreciate there's limit. The client will appreciate that there's limitations as to what you can say and do over the phone.
If I had to hypothesize the different reasons, I think that's one of them. I think clients have common sense. They understand you're doing the best you can over a virtual medium. There's also the fact that telehealth compared to brick and mortar is still fairly new, and so maybe it just needs more time to get more mistakes, more errors happening. The third also is that in a brick and mortar setting, as you know, whether you practice ER or general practice or specialty, you have 1,000 things going on in your mind. People are waiting, animals are coming in critical, all this, you're trying to discharge patients, you want to get your staff to leave on time, medical records, and so you're going to be prone to making errors. You have all these things in your head that you're trying to juggle. So there's many factors, and I'm sure there are way more that we haven't thought of that contribute to those numbers. But I also want veterinarians to understand, if they want to be a televeterinarian, that speaking based on numbers and our experience, the risk is very low that you're going to run into a problem.
Okay. Oh, I'm curious, just on your platform, what you described with all those layers of protection, and this might be off air, I'm just really curious. Are you able to see, do people drop off the system? Like when somebody makes a call and they're trying to speak to a vet and they're like, oh, I need to sign a form and blah, blah, blah. Do they drop off? Do you find a high number of people going, it's probably not serious. It's not worth the effort, or not really? Once they decide to contact you guys, they'll go through with it.
Do you mean it like halfway through the consult, they decide they want to?
No, before because you say they've got to sign and read disclosures and all sorts. At that point, before they actually connect, before they pay, get to the payment point, do they bail? Do they go, it's too much effort?
Oh yeah. We have those numbers. I don't know them offhand, but our system will measure how many accounts are created, and that number is way larger than the number of accounts that actually went through with a live session with our veterinarian. 100%. I'm sure if you were to look at something like online shopping like Amazon, the amount of people that put things in their cart and then leave and don't buy it. Yeah, absolutely. And we expected that. It's one of the reasons why we made the platform, we feel, very easy for clients. When they create an account, all we need from them is first name, last name, email, phone number, and that's it. Then they pay and they're on. We made it easy because if you're a stressed out pet owner, your dog just had a seizure, and you have to fill out the dog name, the breed, the age. I mean, you're going to say, screw this, I'm just going to go to the ER, right? So we want to make it where you need 4 data points: first name, last name, email, phone number, pay, and you're on. They literally can be on with a vet with the entire process less than a minute. So we want to make it easy for that reason. But even with it being that easy, people do still bail on it. And, so be it. That's how it is. That's business for you.
That's why I'm asking, because it sounds like if they have to read the form and the disclosures and sign and stuff, it adds friction to the process. And it's exactly that. You want to reduce friction because you do want them on the platform, right?
Yes. And I bet you if I don't know these numbers, I'm sure my development team can figure this out. If I were to ask them how much time passes between the client creating the account and then being on with the vet versus creating the account and then not being on with the vet, but how much time has passed before they bail, I'm wondering if they actually know those numbers. Because I bet you they can track every moment that client is on, even though they haven't paid and they bailed. Because to your point, is the paperwork involved still a hindrance? And I don't know the answer. My gut feeling is people bail because it's a new technology. They're used to having their veterinarian on speed dial, and now they don't anymore. The veterinarians partner with us, so they have to go through a process. Or in that moment, they look at their pet and they're like, you know what, Fluffy looks better. Maybe let me what often happens, I call this doctor shopping, where they have us on the computer, they're thinking about it. On hold, they have the nearest emergency hospital, and then the spouse has poison control on their other phone, and whoever answers first gets the business. And so we think that happens too. So there's a variety of reasons why, beyond just the paperwork part of it.
I'm sure. All right, other concerns. I'll give you one of mine.
Sure.
If I am a clinical veterinarian and I'm considering switching, I worry a bit that I'd be, suppose, bored or unfulfilled, or am I just going to be going, all right, your dog's itching, blah, blah, blah. Go to a vet, go to a real vet.
Yeah.
Is that a concern? And how do you find the people who work in it what's the actual experience?
So in interviewing my vets who are the most seasoned, meaning they've been with me since almost day one, so years now, a lot of them will describe this as having almost an addictive type of hook to it, where it's kind of like downloading a game on your phone and now you're just hooked on it. They view it as a veterinary video game. They find it fun, even though the cases might be a skin case or a diarrhea case, pretty routine general practice stuff. There's no CPR. There's no tapping an abdomen or a chest. There's an addictive thing to it. They enjoy it. I think a key thing, Hugh, honestly, with this is you have to love talking to people. If you're a veterinarian who loves animals, but you kind of don't like the communication part of it, you might find this a bit stressful. But if you love speaking to people, like I know you do, I definitely do, it's enjoyable because you're seeing the relief of people, the stress leave their bodies as you tell them it's not an emergency, don't worry, here's what we can do, here's what you can monitor for, call your vet in the morning, I'll send you the paperwork, I'll send them paperwork. They love it. They're like, oh my God. And that's what gets me high off of doing these sessions. So I don't think the veterinarians get bored of it. And most of my vets are either from general practice world or from the emergency world. And so two different mindsets in terms of like how urgent things are in their day to day, and they seem to enjoy it. But to be fair, like I said, it's not for everybody. Based on your personality type or what kind of hours you want to work or all that, it's not for everybody. I've had plenty of vets that have come and gone, and that's fine. It has to resonate with you in order to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So maybe it is, and I suppose it's like any job, I was going to say in the vet profession, but any job at all, pick the job that suits your personality style and your likes and dislikes. So we've got two kinds of people which maybe not for have some experience under your belt, so not too inexperienced. If you're a number two, if you like getting your hands dirty, if you're I want to cut stuff and do stuff, that obviously this is not for you. And yet, as you say, there are many vets I know who hate the client contact part.
Yeah.
This is not your job. This is not your role. Are there other things that you would say, okay, these things, the people we've employed who are like this or prefer these things, they don't last, they bail? Are there other exclusion factors?
I'll add one more thing to the last statement. You don't have to do this full time, right? You could work in a very busy, crazy brick and mortar, and then you do vet triage or some other platform, and it's much more low key and relaxed and slower pace. So you don't have to go all in. I do have 1/3 of my vets do this full time, meaning 40 to 60 hours a week. The other 2/3 don't. They do this on the side, and they have a primary job in brick and mortar. So I just want to make sure that's clear too. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Actually, a really good point. I'm a very strong proponent of people who say, I don't like being a vet. My first question is always, are you sure it's not just, I don't like being a vet 50 hours a week?
Yeah.
Because for me, that was the secret.
Yes.
I didn't like it. And now that I do fewer shifts, I'm like, oh, I love it. Because I don't get to that saturation point where it's just too much. I'm overwhelmed, basically. And finding ways to say, well, let me do a little bit of that, and then something else that's a change of pace or a complete different environment is, for many people, I find that's the key to a happy vet career. So great on that. And realistically, a lot of people will do this as an additional or a different source of income. And again, this is obviously very specific to each teletriage company, but as a general rule, is income comparable between this? Because I look at it from a business owner's perspective, saying, well, if I pay a vet at an hourly rate, and in their time there, they might do a massive surgery or something that's going to bring in a lot of money for me from the business. Whereas with you guys, it's consult fees only. You're not selling anything else. So is it similar sort of income or less, or like what can the expectations be?
Yeah, so I can't speak for other platforms because they all compensate their veterinarians differently. On hours, at least right now, it could change in the future, but the veterinarians get paid per call that they see or video that they see. And on average, we know that at least on the non-equine platform, the average call is maybe 10 to 12 minutes. And so if they get paid X number of dollars for the one call, and it takes them 10 minutes on average, and they get fit 4 to 6 cases an hour, then they can do the math per hour, per week, per month, and is that worth it for them or not? The other factor to that too is what hours do you want to work? Because even though we're a global company, we still see a maldistribution of cases. We still are very busy between, and again, I'm in the US, so between evening time on any given weekday till about middle of the night, it's our busiest. The rest of the time is quieter. And then weekends and holidays, of course, are very, very busy, but the middle of the night is typically quiet. And that's despite seeing clients from Australia, New Zealand, or Hawaii. It seems to be that distribution is consistent year by year. So the question is, are those hours, depending on where you live, are those hours that you want to work? Because that's when you're going to see the most cases that make the most money. The final thing that I'll mention is the lack of consistency. I can't promise you how many cases will come in any given hour. Because just like an emergency hospital where you can have an oddly quiet Saturday and an oddly busy Wednesday morning, it's the same thing for us too. These are not appointments. These are all walk-ins. And so you could have a Saturday night that's just really quiet, and then a Monday morning that's like, what the hell's going on? It's so busy, right? So we rely on our data of over 5 years where we know on average we are busiest these days and these times. So if you're a veterinarian who needs more consistency with that, this may not be the one for you. If you're a veterinarian who is fine, you want fast action, get things going, and when it's quiet, you're okay with that, then great, that's for you. So that's how we operate currently. I know other platforms operate differently. I just don't know their details, but that's how we compensate the doctors.
That makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense.
And I could add, if you want, I could add one more concern that veterinarians have on the platform, if we have time.
Yeah, I've got times. It's up to you, man.
So seeing different animal types, right? Because not every veterinarian is comfortable with not knowing what animal type is going to show up. On our platform, if you remember, name, phone number, email, that's it. The video pops up and it could be a dog, a cat, a chinchilla, a snake, you don't know. And I tell vets at the interview, not every vet's nervous system is made for that. So you have to be okay with the fact that a chicken can show up on the video without any warning, and the client is like, do you know chickens? And they're holding their chicken on the camera. That happens. And so again, that's not for every veterinarian either. You have to be okay with that sort of spontaneity on the platform. Even though we know over 90% of our cases are going to be dogs and cats, still, after dogs and cats, it's rabbits, birds, reptiles as most common. And they have to be okay with that too. So that's another aspect of this that may concern some veterinarians.
Yeah, that would be something that I'd have to think about carefully personally. You're right. I do like to know what I'm heading into, and I like to feel like I know my stuff. But you said before, it's not always I can't remember if this was off air. The goal is not always a resolution of the problem, right? It is very often based on basic principles. I think you can wait and go see an exotic specialist in the morning. In the meantime, try this and this and this and this. It's not necessarily, oh yeah, your parrot has a nutritional deficiency. It needs to be on this medication.
Correct. Yeah, the first step is triage. Do you have an emergency or not? If you do, let's see if there's some emergency options. If you don't have an emergency, or you do have an emergency but there's no emergency options, what palliative care, what advice, what instruction, direction can I give you until you can see your family veterinarian? In the case of exotics, even during the weekdays, daytime hours, they still can't find a vet. And so you might be watching a Disney guinea pig on camera that probably has bronchopneumonia. It needs to go into a hospital right now. There is no option because of where they live. There's no exotic vets or whatever. So even in those situations, we have the responsibility of trying to give them some advice of what to do, what to look out for, to help them. Yeah. So we get pretty creative, and that's where collaboration kicks in. Our veterinarians all talk to each other, and they all share ideas because they all have different experiences with different situations, different species. So it's a great collaborative environment for that purpose.
Okay, so you're also not, and again, I'm trying to make this as broadly applicable as possible and not just talk about your service.
Sure.
But for you guys, you're not on your own. If you're the vet, you can ask a friend.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
You can do research with whatever items you want to do research with, whether it's online or textbooks or whatever. You can talk to our colleagues. You can talk to your own friends, your own colleagues, in your own personal life, whatever it may be, and then contact the client back later and tell them what you think after you've done your research. So that's fine too, of course.
Okay, cool. All right, we talked about concerns and worries about it. Excuse me. Are there sort of unanticipated perks, joys, things that people really enjoy about this that you might not think about beforehand?
One that I alluded to is giving clients real peace of mind. I mean, seeing the stress leave their body when they're talking to you because they're concerned about, do I have to drive to the nearest emergency hospital, which is 3 hours away and it's snowing outside? Or if they live on an island, do I have to now go onto a ferry or buy a plane ticket for my animal and then travel over some body of water to get to the nearest emergency? They're worried about finances. They're worried about waking up their kids. They're worried about their cat hating the car ride. And when you tell them good news, I don't think it's an emergency, they're like, oh, sigh of relief, you know? And so that I think is probably the number one reason why our vets really enjoy this is they give people real peace of mind for cases that are not an emergency. We can do some things at home and then gives them some time to see a vet in person. So I think that's probably the number one most rewarding thing. I'll flip it a little bit. Let's say you have a hemoabdomen or a GDV at what you suspect anyways, a GDV or a hemoabdomen at home, and that same scenario. It's a plane ride, it's a ferry, it's a 3-hour drive in the snow. Basically, emergency is not an option. What can we do for that animal at home? And we have scary scenarios like that where even though it's stressful to our veterinarians because nobody's advocating that a GDV stay home, but that client has no option. There's no option. And so they collaborate, and even giving that client just education on what to expect, what to do at home, knowing that it's severe, but we're trying to do the best we can with what we have. It gives our vets enjoyment because that person with that GDV, had we not existed, would have to watch their dog die a painful death without any knowledge of what's going on with their animal. At least with us, we can help educate them and maybe even keep that animal alive until they can see a veterinarian. So it's a daunting task, but our veterinarians, I think, take pride, enjoy it, that they can help give that person some perspective on it. So, yeah.
Cool. Very, very cool insight. Do you have any of your own personal or any of your staff, any stories of great cases or really interesting things that had happened?
Oh, for sure. So, we had one session where, do you know what a pleco is? One of those sucker fish. They eat the algae in the fish tank.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
So we had one where the woman calls and she's in like a business outfit. She's at home and she says, my pleco, while I was in my Zoom meeting in another room, my husband found the pleco on the floor. It jumped out of the tank on the floor. He thought it was dead. He threw it in the trash. And hours later, she leaves her office and he's told her the unfortunate news. She noticed even later the garbage bag was moving. She goes in there, grabs the fish and throws it back in the tank and then calls us to say, I don't know what to do, I'm freaking out. The fish has been out of water for like 6 hours or something.
Sorry, but it sounds like a prank call.
It's crazy. Because you're thinking like, there's a couple of things you're thinking of. First of all, this call cost that pet owner $50 US. How much does it cost to replace a suckerfish, right? Like there's that part of it. Yeah. And then there's a part of it is like, how many veterinarians know post-resuscitation on a pleco fish? Like, how much can I guide her? I've never taken care of this fish in a clinical setting, let alone one that maybe died and came back. I don't know. You know, I don't know. And so it's crazy. And so we were looking at the pleco in the tank and it's swimming around. It's got its eyes look sort of white. And so I asked her, I said, the only thing that looks weird on this fish, because I had them as a child, I had these as pets, so I kind of knew a little bit. And I thought the eyes always white. She goes, I don't know, I've never paid attention. And I said, well, okay, we'll take that as a stress response and we'll see if that affects the fish's quality of life beyond this call. But I said, honestly, other than cleaning the dog hair off of it, because it had all this German Shepherd hair because they have a dog at home, I said, clean the hair off of it gently, otherwise let's just minimize stress and see what happens. It's already in the tank and it seems like it's doing okay. It's already sucking on algae. So that was an interesting call. Yeah.
I don't know if that story inspires me or makes me go, no, I don't know if this is for me. Because as you say, like you pay $50, the answer is put it back in the water.
Right.
And you've done that.
Right.
Already.
That's the thing. They just want to know. Like they just want to talk to somebody. And I told her, I said, I'll do some research after this call and make sure that these white eyes are not a concern. I went through Merck manual. I went through I Google searched. I went to university websites. I went to PubMed, and I couldn't find anything, that was of concern. So I just called her back and said, look, I'm not finding anything else. Monitor and see. And they appreciate all that research, all that time that went into it to help them. So
That's another question. Do you have any follow up?
Mhm.
Like, do you have any? Do you hear back how things went?
So I could set it up where I have either a support team or a veterinarian's follow up maybe a few days later to see how things are going. The reason why I never implemented that is because we're very careful to not give the impression to clinics who partner with us that we
Yep,
are trying to establish a VCPR,
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
And that's one part of it. And that's the biggest part of it. The other part of it is when you contact the pet owner, you're now opening up a can of worms because theoretically, if it's 3 days later, it's already past like the weekend or the overnight, and they should have seen their vet by now or at least made an appointment. Well, if they hadn't,
Gotcha.
they're now thinking, oh, good, I can ask you more questions. And they think that's a
Yeah.
replacement for seeing their vet in person, which it's not.
Gotcha.
So those are the reasons. So we could, but
Yeah.
I
No, it
never,
makes sense.
yeah, I never bothered with it for those reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
From working in telemedicine, teletriage, I think those are my main questions and concerns. I think that's useful. If some people will listen to this and go, okay, no, I don't think it is for me, and others will go, yeah, it's cooler than I thought. Is there anything that I'm missing from that perspective, or do you think we've covered it pretty well?
I think your viewers and listeners should know that this is not the end of it. It's going to continue to evolve. The world of telerobotics, telediagnostics, telementorship, telemonitoring, these are all things that are already in the works in real life or are pending. But there are some cool things coming down the pipe. And then when you look at augmented reality, virtual reality, and how they can play a role with virtual care, there's going to be some cool stuff coming the next 5 to 10 years in this space. So I would say this is just the beginning of it. Even though it may sound like we covered a lot of ground just in our short time talking today, there is a ton of stuff happening. And because we're at the forefront of this, I hear about this stuff and I get to talk to cool companies and cool people about what they're doing. And it's very exciting. So I would say that one thing to add to this conversation is look forward to the future because this is just the beginning of it. For anybody who doubts whether or not telehealth is a viable field, we are past that. We're going on to another realm with this stuff, and this is just the basics.
Okay. So do you have time to dig into that sort of stuff a little bit again?
Sure.
And this might be from the perspective of a business owner saying, do I incorporate this either through outsourcing it or through incorporating new things in the way that I practice? Have you got more time?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that.
Great. So let's jump in with the stuff you just mentioned, the future. Out of the things you briefly listed, a few words there that immediately I went, what's that?
Yeah.
Let's pick one thing. What's the coolest thing that's coming or is here but not commonly known yet in telehealth that excites you?
I think telediagnostics is probably my answer for that one. Telediagnostics I would define as the ability to monitor certain parameters objectively of a pet and have it be shared instantaneously with a veterinary professional. So a good example of that we've been performing is what's that device for diabetics that measures?
Yeah. Continuous glucose monitors. So
Right.
There's a few brand names now. The Freestyle Libre.
Right. That's a very easy, understandable, relatable telediagnostic tool. We've all been using it for some time now. Very powerful. That enhances pet care. It enhances veterinary monitoring. It's awesome, right? There are now diagnostics that you can implement in your hospital that will monitor certain parameters of a hospitalized patient without any wires, without any suction cups, and you can monitor things like temperature, heart rate, whatever for that pet without touching them. And the device is doing this all with telediagnostics, and it'll monitor multiple pets at one time, and that information is automatically uploaded into the cloud for veterinary observation. Also, those tools can have alarms to them, so they'll alert you when something seems off. Those types of telediagnostics are now in the hospital setting, and my prediction is it's going to enter the pet owner's life, where they can set up something in their house that monitors certain vitals. Or let's say you have a dog that's prone to seizures and you want to know if your dog had a seizure while you were at work. Diagnostics to be able to show that, whether it be based on erratic movement or spikes in temperature or heart rate or blood pressure, whatever it is, but being able to give the pet owner the ability to monitor their own animal with objective data so they can contact a virtual platform and discuss whether or not that spike in something is of concern or not. So telediagnostics, we're in the infancy of it, but it's going to be, I think, huge, not just from the veterinary clinical aspect where you can monitor pets more reliably and not rely on technicians and stuff as much, but also home care as a preventative measure to monitor animals. So if you can tell that your dog all of a sudden has a increased body temperature, is this the beginning of something, or is it stress, or what is it? And you can catch diseases earlier that way. And that's of course better for everybody, preventative care, right? So that's an example of where this is going to go with health. And I have ideas that I can't disclose, but we have things we're going to implement here, hopefully the next 2 to 3 years with vet triage and how it ties into telediagnostics. So that's going to be a cool and up and coming field in this space.
That is really cool. It's interesting you talk about the in-hospital monitoring stuff. When I had my emergency hospital, this was probably 6 years ago. It's basically when I got my first smartwatch. And I was sitting at work going, shit, man, this is so cool. Because again, you have a sick hospital patient. If that heart rate goes up or something like that, something's going on. You've got to pay attention. It's either going to be in pain or it's decompensating. I was like, I actually bought a bunch of cheap Chinese monitors to experiment. I was shaving dogs and strapping it on their necks and strapping it on there to see can I institute this to my hospital patients? Because you're right, the technician time is limited, and that's how you miss something. Is you miss that, between check 1 and 4 hours later, the next check something happens, and you. So it's so cool to see it coming out. Are there devices out there now that you've come across that work, that people are using? And I'm happy to. I'm happy to say brand names if you have cool ones.
Yeah. No, I don't think any company would mind sharing the information. So one company that's at the forefront of this is Zomedica. I think they're based in the U.S. and they have a device called Vet Guardian, and it's it's like the size of an iPad basically, and it monitors these parameters using thermal imagery, so thermography. And it allows the clinician, like I said, to upload this information to the cloud, and you can monitor the patient continuously. You just attach it to an IV pole and have it point at the animal, and there you have it. No wires, no Holter monitor, no bandaging.
Oh, really? So there's nothing attached to the patient at all?
Correct.
What can it check? So thermal. So what can you reliably learn from that? That sounds like science fiction.
So body temperature, pulse rate or heart rate. Movement of the patient, because not only does it have thermal imagery, it actually has a real video camera attached to it too. So when the patient is moving, you can tell that as well. I had to look at the other parameters, but those are the ones that I off the top of my head that I know of. Yeah.
How does it do heart rate?
It's all thermography. So they have clinical trials on this, and basically this is of course me trying to answer your question without being based on the thermal pattern of the patient. It uses an algorithm, calculates it, figures out the parameters. Yeah, it's wild to me. It's crazy. And I know there's other technology in there, not just thermography. I'm focused on thermography because the one of the video cameras on there shows the animal with all the heat patterns on it, but it has some kind of radar thing too that it uses. I'm just not educated on the details.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I'm glad you told me that, because if I saw that online, I'd be like, bullshit. It's not gonna work.
Oh yeah, I think these units are like $5,000 a piece. I mean, you have to be able to use it and break even on it, right? So you need a facility that warrants this type of thing. It's gonna be for those patients where you just did brachycephalic surgery on a dog. Every time you touch them, they freak out, and so you want to minimize touching them, but you still want to monitor things. You have to have that level of intense case to make this worth it, I think. Or
for an ECC hospital, for critical care center, it makes so much sense because it's how much is a technician wage?
Yes.
Per month. That just makes care so much better. So I think that's really cool.
Oh yeah. And there are plenty of improvements that need to be done. We want to measure more parameters. We want to make the device smaller, thinner, lighter, right? Like there's so many things you can do. Just remember how cell phones evolved, right? We're going to see the same thing with these tools. This is the very beginning of these diagnostics. So I think what we see now will look like caveman in 3 years, when they continue to improve this stuff. Yeah.
Where I work now, our seizure monitoring tool is a collar with bells on. We can hear them seizuring. This sounds better. It sounds more reliable.
You know what? The old school measures work too. Hey, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. That's funny.
All right. So pivoting to the standard, your sort of stuff, teletriage, having some sort of a service where you can communicate with clients, not in person, as in not physically in person. Lessons learned for you guys. Are there standout things, maybe things that you thought were going to be challenges that were easier than you thought, where you went, oh, this works much better, or vice versa, stuff that blindsided you a bit where you went, oh, shit, I did not expect that to be a big issue?
Long list. So initially, I thought the biggest challenge was going to be to hire veterinarians. I thought veterinarians are not going to want to do this. They want to be in the hospital, using their hands, using diagnostics, and I was wrong. I'm always sitting on 150 plus applicants ready for work. I've had no problem. It's crazy, Hugh. It's crazy. I've never advertised for vets except when we launched our equine platform. I had to advertise for equine doctors. In less than a month, I was able to staff our platform 24/7 with equine veterinarians. Less than a month. It takes hospitals years to find one person, right?
Wow.
So it's crazy. If I wanted to create a platform that was all nurses, I could fill it in a month. Because I get applicants now, I'm not even asking for nurses, and I get applicants from nursing. Hey, when you're ready to hire a nurse, let me know, I'm interested. It's out of control. So the application part of it was a surprise to me. I actually thought the veterinary field would hold on to this right away, but the culture has been the opposite. Trying to convince veterinarians that telehealth is a viable means of practicing veterinary medicine, right, has been the hardest part of all of this, because veterinarians, as you know, we're difficult to change. We don't like change. We're always skeptical of things. We're always worried about bad ethics. We're worried about bad medicine, and we're worried about money being taken out of our pockets, right? And so I didn't realize, maybe foolishly so, that the veterinary culture would be hard to steer into that direction where they view telehealth as a really powerful method of taking care of animals. So that was a surprise to me as well. So those are just two surprises that I learned over time from doing this.
Okay, cool. Is that changing? Are you finding a more of an acceptance as it's becoming, we've had some time to get comfortable with this change?
On the non-equine side, absolutely. Any practice that doesn't practice on large animals, production animals, they are much more likely to adapt to this technology. Large animal is a different story. They are much more difficult to convince. Equine vets especially have been used to being on call 24/7 with the clients having their cell phone forever. And we launched the equine platform, I think 2 years ago now. And it's still very slow to ramp up because they're so scared of clients being upset that they can't just phone you right away, anytime, day or night, and to hand over their clients to us so we can manage their after hours on call so they have more work-life balance. That has been a huge struggle.
It's so weird. I would have thought it'd be the exact opposite. They'd be so sick of it. I mean, that's a large reason why I never wanted to do larges, is the constant on call. I reckon they've got Stockholm syndrome. The equine vets, they're so used to being hostage to their clients that they can't.
And we are getting more and more equine partnerships over time, so it's moving in the right direction, but still compared to non-equine, very slow. You would think that after they've tried all the other things to manage their quality of life and all those other things have failed, they'd be willing to try something new, and they're very, very slow to adopt. So we're going to keep trying. We're fighting the good fight. We went to the American Association of Equine Practitioners convention for the past 2 years, and we'll go again this year. I think in the October, November, they have it, and we'll keep on fighting the good fight because we know it's an answer to their problem. We just need them to be able to let go of the reins, no pun intended, and let us control their after hours on call.
Good pun. I like that. uh, that's really interesting. I'm going to circle back to your massive list of people who want to work in it.
Yeah.
I think that's worth pointing out, worth underlining for practice owners, brick and mortar practice owners, to say that if we're trying to create workplaces that people want to work in. It's the whole staff finding and staff retention thing, and there's a desire for this sort of thing. So maybe setting up something as part of your business model where your staff have the opportunity to do some of this might be very attractive. Might actually be a recruitment tool.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I love that you said that. We've had plenty of hospitals that use us for their after hours on call, who are trying to hire new vets, especially new grads, and the new graduates don't want to be on call. And in order to entice them to join that practice, they'll say, look, you're going to be on call. There's no way around it. We live in a remote area. However, vet triage has decreased our calls by 80-90%. We almost never get called in, and when we do, it's really an emergency, and so you're not getting bullshit. It's an authentic, a real case that a veterinarian has seen and triaged and deemed an emergency. So they've used that. They've actually asked our permission. Can we use the fact that we're partnered with you to get this doctor to come join our practice? And we're like, absolutely, go for it. That's the point of work-life balance. That's the whole goal here, is to help veterinary clinics with balance. So yes, it helps with recruitment. It helps with turnover. If you're an emergency hospital and you know that your staff is sick of seeing the ear infection and the limping puppy, things that are not an emergency, and that's creating stress, well, if you can partner with Vet Triage and send us those cases so we can triage them away, you can focus on the pyometra, the GDV, the seizuring case, and we'll handle the allergic reaction, the ear infection, the whatever. And then you keep your staff because now they're not stressed out and annoyed all the time, right? How many times in your ER hospital, Hugh, did you hear a technician or an assistant or a doctor say, why is this case here? Why are they here, right? It's always. And I don't blame them. They've got a septic abdomen and a post-op splenectomy. They have big cases to deal with. They don't want to see this barking loud puppy come in for one bout of diarrhea at 3 a.m. So it helps with turnover and hiring all the way around. If you can leverage telehealth, however you want to leverage it is fine, whether it's partnership or doing your own telehealth, but you can leverage it in a way to try and maintain that a happy climate in your workplace.
Okay. One of the things I was going to ask you, but maybe we have actually covered it in the first section, is lessons learned in terms of the service part, the actual job that you're doing. Is it easier or harder? What can you take away from it? But I feel when we talked about the very low complaint numbers, and I feel like we covered some of it. Is there anything to add there that you guys have learned from that to say, well, this works, this was surprising, this is actually much harder than we thought in terms of the job, not the back end stuff?
Yeah, I think having done this firsthand from day one and then talking to my vets about it, I think, subjectively speaking, providing telehealth services like this is so much easier than brick and mortar. It's so much easier because your options are finite. I can't run blood work. I can't run radiographs. I can't do anything with you other than discuss your history, look at the pet on video, and figure out whether or not I think it's an emergency and what to do next. And because of that limitation, I actually find it quite freeing that I know what I would do in a clinical setting with your case, but I can't physically do it because we're virtual. I find this to be very easy. And for somebody like me I'm a bit, proactive. I like being aggressive and moving forward. My average call is 6 to 8 minutes on this platform. And that's not me rushing the client. I'm not cutting corners. I'm just punctual, get to the point, answer my questions. I make a determination. I'm a seasoned vet, almost 20 years in the profession. I'm also a specialist, so I've dealt with complex cases. These are really easy for me. And I think a lot of my vets, especially the senior ones, feel the same way. I think it's easy. That's not to say that there's no challenge to it. I mean, it's still virtual, right? You have to figure out, is this a hemoabdomen or not? Is it a GDV or just like a food or gas bloat? So there's finesse to it. But I think, just to answer your question, at least from my perspective and talking to my vets, This is enjoyable just from the standpoint of like you're limited in what you can do, and it's fun, and I think it's fairly easy. It's not as challenging as brick and mortar. I think you get the occasional case where it's like a third or fourth opinion. They've seen their vet, they've seen two specialists, and they have no answer, and now they're coming to you. And those I find, I love those because I'm a specialist. I'm used to getting,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, oh, good. What do you have? Can you send me X-rays? What do you have? A CAT scan? Can you send me that? You have an MRI? Send me that. Let me see the blood work, and I'll go through it. And I love that stuff, and because you're now looking at it from a bird's eye view, and you have all this valuable data in front of you they normally don't get virtually. So I actually enjoy those, but my vets probably find those to be more challenging, but again, they can collaborate with each other. Anyway, I think it's much easier than brick and mortar, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Challenges in that regard, and again, in doing the job, unexpected challenges, because as you said, we're well aware of the limitations, the things that you tried, or common mistakes, or where people get stuck on this.
It's the paperwork, the medical records. And this is just like brick and mortar, right? Like if you're in charge of the team, let's say you own your hospital and you're in charge of all these doctors, you know that Dr. A writes beautiful records, Dr. D terrible records, right? And you can talk to them till you're blue in the face, and they just can't do it, or they don't want to. We need tight medical records. That's true in brick and mortar, and it's especially true with us because we are limited. We don't have the cushion of blood work or urine test or radiographs. So trying to get them to write medical records, I would love if they wrote it the same way, but of course I can't standardize it that way. There's 70 doctors, and I don't want them to all be me, and I'm by no means the perfect solution to this. So I just want thorough medical records and consistency. Everything you told the client that you spoke about, even if you don't think it's important, put it in the record. Type it in there, right?
Okay.
Anything.
I have to ask, are you recording the calls?
So once in a while I will, and that's for quality assurance. If I have a doctor that I'm like, a client emailed us, seemed a little bit unhappy. What's going on? Is it the client or the doctor? And so I'll monitor, and the vets know this. It says in the platform that it's archiving. Then I'll monitor and take notes and all that stuff. But most of the time I don't. It's expensive to record, and it doesn't really prove useful to us. I don't really need it. If I get a client,
sorry, go.
If I get a client complaining about a doctor, then I talk to the doctor about it. I say, what happened here? And they explain to me their perspective, and then I address it with the client. And if it happens again, then maybe it's not the client's fault. Maybe it's the doctor. Maybe I have to get rid of them. And I've had to fire doctors for they just can't meet the standards that I'm looking for on the platform. But I will record on occasion when I need to. The other cool thing about recording, which I'll do once in a while, is I hope to catch like a really weird animal on video, and I can use it for lecturing, to show people, look, we had an axolotl, we had a sea otter, and that's cool because in the veterinary space, at least based on publications, this animal never had telehealth ever, and so we're the first ones that have it, right? And it's actually the first paper I wrote for Vet Triage. I published it 2-3 years ago in Frontiers, and it was 15 novel species that were aided by telehealth or teletriage. And so I had in there 15 animal types that, at least based on a PubMed search, never had any telehealth recorded in history. And so anyway, so I record for that reason too, to show cool cases like that. Yeah.
I'll chat you off. Well, no, I'll ask you now, but this is
sure.
Off air. And the only reason I asked is with your challenge with notes, are you guys utilizing AI note making at all? Because it's so much easier for you guys where you actually have it's on a computer. The challenge at brick and mortar is running around and stuff to it. And I use AI note taking, and it's fucking phenomenal.
So, and I have plenty of colleagues in brick and mortar that use AI. They love it. It's been great for them. As much as I am pro technology, I'm going to sound a bit old school with this and say, well, if I'm already doing sessions in 6 to 8 minutes, including the paperwork, that's everything from beginning to end. I'm not sure what AI can do for me. Having said that, everybody says that about new technology, and they realize, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? So
it's just because your output will be, because you say you can't make the notes, and again, this is off air, this is just me.
Oh, sure.
Sure. If you want your notes standardized, it would literally be, it transcribes, it's listening in the background.
Yeah.
And when you're done, you just say, notes, and you've got the entire conversation there, and it will give you your standardized notes with noting everything that was said, and it will take 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I've talked to my business partner about it as well, and the other thing we're worried about too. Again, the answer is not no. We were thinking about it. It's just we haven't taken that leap. The other thing we're worried about too is any data leakage. We don't want any of our information being
No,
saved.
it's pretty secure. We use it at our work in the thing. No, I mean, if you're going to go onto a standard ChatGPT or something, then maybe some concern. But the other ones are the one that when we use, for example, is made for medical practices, and I don't understand how they do it, but they guarantee us there's zero. It's completely secure, locked in. So you
Okay.
use an external service. So there's
Yeah.
definitely ways to get around that.
Okay.
Anyway, that's me on my tangent. It's just I love it because I hate note writing. I'm slow at typing and I'm bad at it, and this way it gets done for me. So
I think it's inevitable that we're going to incorporate it into ours. It's just a matter of just getting on that boat and doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other problem, to be honest with you, Hugh, also is like a matter of just bandwidth because I have so much on my plate and to try and implement something new like this and then go through all the growing pains with it and everything. I'm sure it's
Yeah, I
easy.
get it.
Yeah, but there's that too. It's just like I have so much to do. But again, I don't like those excuses. I'm for it. I just need time to investigate it and see how it would work with us.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the actual conversation. What about the technology side of it? Because off air you told me you guys built it all out the box, your own platform. Why is that? So let's say I'm a GP practice, but I want to start using some sort of telemedicine, and I'm not going to build my own platform. Why did you guys choose to make your own? And if you're in a different scenario, what should you look out for or be wary of, or what are your requirements that's going to tick the right boxes for you?
Yeah. So for us, first of all, we did not want to have an app. We want it to be where the client can go on the website right away, pay, and be on with the vet because we're dealing with emergencies. Even though it may not be a real emergency, from the client's perspective, they think it's an emergency. So for them to have to go to the app store, download it, then create an account, it's going to create barriers. So we made it where it's web-based on ours. Obviously, an app is a natural way of going about it, and they're cool, they're cute, and we eventually will probably have one. But for me, if we're going to really focus on emergency, we have to be web-based. And not just web-based, but it's agnostic to any device. So we want to build our own platform that was web-based, and you can do it on a Mac, on an iPad, on your phone, whatever it is. We want it to be able to be used throughout, right? PC, whatever. So those were important for us. The other part of it too is we want also to have a platform that we can evolve. So I'll give you a good example of this. Right now, as it stands, if you are providing telehealth within a brick and mortar, you are required to maintain medical records in compliance with standard brick and mortar medical records. If, however, you're providing telehealth outside of a brick and mortar, there's no rules for that. And so you can write whatever crappy notes you want if you're not related to a brick and mortar, and that's fine. It's your prerogative. My prediction was we will eventually not only need actual medical records, but we will eventually probably need our own EMR, electronic medical record, like a real one, with client information, pet information. So I want a platform that we can build that we can also then evolve as the rules evolve. Our platform currently it is an EMR. We don't use 90% of it because we don't have to yet. Why bother? But when we will, other companies are going to have to catch up, and we're already built. So I wanted to own our own platform so we can evolve it over time, improve it. And then of course there's things like quality. I want good quality visual. I want good quality audio. I want cybersecurity, so we're HIPAA compliant, even though we're not required to be in the veterinary space. I wanted the ability to control the stuff. And honestly, just from a standpoint of just being cool, if I had to use Zoom or Skype to do this, are you a real company? Like you're leeching off some other platform. I want to own the damn thing and be a big boy in the field. And so we put in the money and the time to build something that's truly unique. And then lastly, I'm a veterinarian. I want the platform to appease me as a doctor. If I hate my platform, how can I expect another doctor to like it? And so, I was the only doctor on, like I said, for years before we hired our first vet. And I found the platform to be very easy. It was great. And so I onboard vets and same feedback. They love it. And we continue from there. So those are all the reasons, some of the reasons, I guess, why we decided to build our own.
Okay. All right. But when you guys have it's a very different vision for somebody else who wants to say, add some element of telemedicine to my brick and mortar business. So okay, if I was a clinic owner and I want to start doing teleconsults, I'd immediately gravitate towards saying, as you say, Zoom or WhatsApp calls or something like
Mm-hmm,
that with
mm-hmm.
my clients. Any reason why that wouldn't work?
No, no.
Like what?
You can provide this medium using any video device you want, as long as you believe it's secure, meaning no leaked data or whatever else, right? Even though again, confidentiality is not a big deal in the veterinary space like it is in the human space. As long as it's a secure platform, then sure, you can use whatever you want. Um, that to me is up for discussion and have at it, because if you can leverage telehealth in your brick and mortar, you don't want to necessarily invest a lot of money into it, but you want to make it useful. The only thing though, Hugh, is that it didn't seem to really catch on. Once we started Vet Triage, there were other companies that came out afterwards, and their business model was leasing out their platform for vet hospitals to use.
Yeah,
Right? And those,
I've seen ads targeted at me saying, well, this is a medical
yes,
telehealth software.
and in the beginning during COVID, they blew up. I mean, they were popular. Everybody thought they'd be doing. And then you quickly find out that veterinarians don't like to be on video. If they're in a hospital, they want to use their hands and run diagnostics and do stuff. If you're stuck on a video call in a hospital, it's kind of like, what am I doing here? I'm on a video call. I could just have them come in and then I'll just palpate the animal, you know? So it quickly ran out of steam. I don't know where the numbers are now, but as far as I can tell, they're not even on the radar anymore. So there's a message that's clear where veterinary hospitals, although they could leverage telehealth, make their lives more efficient and more the workflow more efficient, balance, it doesn't seem to appeal to them as much.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's based on conversations I've had on here, and I forget which ones, but the idea of saying, okay, I have a brick and mortar practice, but perhaps it makes sense in terms of productivity and also balance for the staff to say, well, Dr. X is going to work from home on Thursdays, and she's going to see all of our rejects via video call. You know, follow up with all these clients, and so not necessarily the first consults, but the ones that are, or talk to the diabetic patients, have a teleconsult, which makes sense. But it is interesting that it's not actually taking off. But for that, you could just sit. You can have your PIMS open at home, and you can have Zoom on your other screen or WhatsApp, whatever, any of the many ones out there.
And I love that you said that, because that's absolutely how they can leverage telehealth. They can also have recheck appointments be telehealth. You could have technician appointments be telehealth, right? You can literally quadruple your appointments if most of them are virtual, right? People can work from home. If you have a veterinarian who's pregnant and she can still work, but she can't be there, have her. And so I agree. I think it's a cultural problem. Number one, veterinarians still don't see, if you're an employer, you may not see it worth paying a vet 6 figures to be at home. And then the other thing is technology. I will tell you, we have a whole customer service and a development team. It is a pain in the ass because most people have bad internet, bad devices. They're
Okay.
older. They don't know how to use technology. Their internet drops. Their cell phone dies. Whatever. Speaking of cell phone dying, my computer is dying. Give me 1 second. That's so funny. What good timing.
Mr. Judgy.
I know. Oh, you're so good with your technology. And so I think that trying to set up a Zoom call with a client who is not very tech savvy is a pain in the ass. And that's Zoom. Zoom is pretty easy to get on. This is a platform that we don't advertise it like a Zoom. It's telehealth, right? And so it's a pain in the ass. So I wonder if those two reasons are why.
So to clarify, it's a pain in the ass for you guys as well. Is that one of your operational problems?
Yes, it's just I would say it's a challenge, but we have teams that take care of it. I have a dev team, I have customer support. They handle it, and it's knock on wood, it's worked very, very well. But we also do this full time. This is 24/7, and we're not just dealing with Americans. We're an American-based company. We're dealing with Canadian, UK, New Zealand, Australia. We've had calls from Italy, Portugal, Greece, Africa. So we have to deal with everybody's technological bullshit to get them on. And even though it's a challenge, we've mastered it because we do this 24/7 for over 5 years now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, what's your default if somebody has? How do you deal with bad internet connection?
We have a phone line. We have a phone number.
Okay.
We have
Okay. Yeah.
an American, a Canadian, an UK, and an Australian phone line. People can call
Yeah.
in and they can pay over the phone and talk to our vets on the phone. And then when the
Okay.
vet
So good
wants
thing.
images, they can text or email videos or pictures. So we get around that. That's one way of getting.
Okay.
We have other technology too that we can talk about if you want, but that's the main thing is we can just get them on the phone and do it that way. You know.
Okay. That's a simple solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm done with my questions. Is there anything we haven't discussed that people need to keep in mind, or any parting messages, or anything that I've missed?
No, man, I think that's great. Your questions are always intriguing, and I welcome any other discussion in the future with you. It's always fun.
Cool. Where can people find you if they listen to this and says, "Oh, I think I need to outsource my after hours from," as you
Yeah.
said, anywhere in the world?
Yeah.
What do we Google?
So vettriage.com, that's vettriage.com. There's a contact form in there you can fill out, and then I'll get the email directly, or my business partner will, and you can inquire. But also we have lots of social media. There's my name, Dr. Shadi Arafij, in Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. We have a Vet Triage Instagram, and so you can message us, DM us, whatever, through any of those platforms. Also, they're monitored all the time. As you can imagine, we get lots of messages. So those are the ways to reach out to us, and we can talk about partnership with your clinic, or if you're a pet owner, we can help you get online with the veterinarians.
Cool. I will put links in the show notes as well, or in the show description when you're listening to this. You can click on it and connect with with Vet Triage and get online with them.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We're happy to help.
Shadi, thank you so much for your time. It's really interesting topic, and I think it's one of those episodes that I think are going to get more listens because, as you say, as the culture shifts, people are going to think about this more and more and more. So,
Oh, for sure.
thanks for your time, and thanks for doing it and doing all the hard work for us to get it up and running.
Thank you. Yeah, we made it our goal every year. We launch a new part of the platform, and to stay in the know. And so we're excited to see what the next. We have some cool ideas coming up. So we'll see where all that goes. Thank you very much for your time.
Amazing. Don't run away. I'll just stop recording. I just wanted to do the official wrap.